Hello everyone, GoldenNova here, and get ready cause I'm about to have some fun. TCG exclusives aren't always good, but they never fail to be interesting to talk about, and this time around is no different. The design team decided to take two elements of the game that's always seemed to be out of step with the rest of the format and see how they operate together. On the one hand, Rituals, a series of cards that always seem to be overtuned as an apology for how bad the mechanic is, and Reptiles, a type that always seems to be overtuned as an apology for how bad their support has been. Despite that, neither of them seem to have consistent tournament success, but that doesn't mean they aren't going to keep trying. Will their combined forces be able to take them to new heights they could not achieve alone? With the sick art and theming they used for it, they better be. So arm yourself with your most powerful legendary blade, cause it's time for Mitsurugi Explained. Today's episode is possible thanks to viewers like you, as well as my patrons. If you like what I do here, I would super appreciate it if you'd subscribe to help us reach another wonderful milestone video, and if you want to support me directly while getting some awesome benefits, check out the link to my Patreon in the description below. So, what's the deal with Mitsurugi? Well, they're a series of dark attribute reptile-type monsters, and rituals are their bread and butter. Every monster is named for a legendary Japanese sword, with focus given to ones wielded by equally legendary swordsmen like Takemikizuchi and Susanoo, the latter of whom slew the Yamata no Orochi, an 8-headed serpent. Ooh, very clever there. This also means that the number 8 features quite prominently across the archetype. But how does the deck function? Well, it's hard to sell you on them when looking at a broader perspective, so let's get a bit more granular and cover the monsters in detail to see what they've got going. First up, we have our non-ritual monsters, and the first three are actually pretty similar. The Mitsurugi no Mikotos, the Serpent Sword Lords. They're all level 4 monsters, and each have an effect where if any number of other reptile monsters you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can have it tribute itself instead. They also each have an effect that triggers if they're normal or special summoned, or if they're tributed. So not only does this synergize with its own protection effect, but also when you use it for your ritual summons. Mitsurugi no Mikoto Aramasa has 1200 attack and 900 defense, and its trigger effect adds a Mitsurugi monster, except a copy of itself, from your deck to your hand. Mitsurugi no Mikoto Saji has 1000 attack and 1700 defense, and its trigger adds a Mitsurugi spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. And Mitsurugi no Mikoto Kusanagi has 1600 attack and 400 defense, and its trigger lets you target a Mitsurugi card in your graveyard or banishment, except a copy of itself, and add it to your hand. What I like most is that these work independent of the ritual mechanic. They fetch you cards whether you summon them or tribute them, which makes them good starters and extenders at any point in the game, which can be one of the biggest stumbling blocks for other ritual strategies, so these are a welcome trio, even if they are pretty samey. But if you're gonna have them stand around and get sacrificed off, then why in the heck did you give them all such cool looking swords? Don't trash those! Think of all the sick fight scenes you could do with those. In fact, give those swords to me! Next up, we have another main deck monster, but it's a pretty big departure. Mitsurugi no Miko, the Serpent Sword Prince, Wosu, a level 8 monster with 2000 attack and defense, and you can special summon this card from your hand by attributing one other reptile monster from your hand and a monster your opponent controls. But you can't special summon nor activate monster effects for the rest of the turn, except reptile monsters. But you can only special summon copies of this card once per turn, this way. And if this card is tributed, you can discard a card, and if you do, add this card to your hand. So yeah, our deck has a kaiju in it, no big deal. It may have a few more caveats, only being able to tribute the reptile from your hand can be rough without the right grip, but you get to keep the monster you summon. It is basically a vanilla, but the tribute can jumpstart your plays, and when you tribute it to make a ritual, you can get it back to kaiju again and use it as material again. It's a pretty nifty tool to have in your arsenal, and despite the level, I wouldn't be upset to see it in my opening hand. Now, I can see why everyone is going so crazy over this whole blueprints thing. Alright, that does it for the non-ritual monsters. Now it's time for the rituals. All of them are level 8 monsters that can be ritual summoned using Mitsurugi Ritual, and if they're tributed, you can add a Mitsurugi card from your deck to your hand, except a copy of itself. Then, it can special summon itself. This is positively bonkers. This means that no matter what, tributing them helps get you closer to your end goal, and if they were properly ritual summoned, they can become ritual fodder that just reborns themselves, meaning you lose no board presence, and you still get a search out of it. This sadly makes them vulnerable to Ash Blossoms at every turn, but hey, Pobody's nerfed, right? Ame no Habakiri no Mitsurugi has 2400 attack and 1800 defense, and while on the field, monsters your opponent controls lose 800 attack. So this thing can match blows with anything that's originally 3200 attack or lower. You can reveal this card in your hand to special summon a Mitsurugi monster from your deck, then tribute a monster that you control. You can only use this effect once per duel. So in a vacuum, you can summon out the Makotos and get their trigger effect, even if you have to tribute them after being summoned, making Habakiri a +1 that helps smooth out your hand. And you get double bonuses if you keep the monster that you summoned and tribute a different monster, preferably one with its own trigger effect. And even after that effect is used, you still got one hell of a debuff lined up that not only makes it stronger, but makes your other monsters more formidable by association. I'm telling you, this Serpent Sword ain't no featherweight. Ame no Murakumo no Mitsurugi has 3200 attack and 800 defense, and if this card is special summoned, you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls. And when your opponent activates a card or effect as a quick effect, you can activate this effect, making it so your opponent can discard a card, and if they don't, that effect is negated. So once per turn, you basically get to tax your opponent for an extra card to use one of their own, which can have the unintended side effect of enabling a graveyard synergy for your opponent, but if they have no cards in hand, then you just found yourself an Omni-Negate for free. But we also can't forget about that Raigeki effect. That goes bananas. Not just because it makes a frightening entrance the first time, but because it just keeps happening. Tribute Murakumo for something else, search out a Mitsurugi, then bring it back to destroy their monster lineup again. A truly devastating effect if you have a quick way to tribute it, and boy howdy, do we have ways. In a single card, we make our opponent worried about their monster lineup and the state of their own hand. After all, if they want to make sure that one of their effects can go through, they'll have to save up a card for a rainy day. Futsu no Mitama no Mitsurugi has 2000 attack and 3400 defense, and if your opponent special summons any number of monsters except during the damage step, you can target a reptile monster in your graveyard, except a copy of this card, and special summon it. And you can activate this effect once per chain! That's right, every time your opponent special summons, you get to do so in kind, provided they space them out a bit. This gives great utility to your Mikotos, because not only are you triggering their effects when you summon them back to get you more cards, they'll be around to protect your reptiles with their self-tributing effects. But that's not all. Bring back a Murakumo that's stuck in your graveyard to Raigeki your opponent, Habakiri to debuff their entire field, or any other reptile that you're playing, because this is based on type, not Archetype. And I know a few reptiles who have made it their business to be good at utilizing the grave. This is a truly outrageous card, and while I think the power is worth the effort you've got to put into it to get a hold of it, I'm still a little floored that something like this even exists. Thankfully, because it's only a super rare, you won't have to shell out too much for it. Alright, that does it for the monsters. Now it's time for the spells and traps. Mitsurugi Magatama is a quick play spell card that you can activate during your main phase to utilize one of two effects. You can either tribute a reptile monster, then target a face-up card your opponent controls and destroy it, or ritual summon a Mitsurugi ritual monster from your hand by tributing monsters you control whose total levels equal or exceed its level. Hey, so you remember earlier how we said we had the means to trigger Murakumo at will? Well, you're looking at it, and both versions handle it swimmingly. Either the first mode wipes out a face-up back row card while the Raigeki follow-up finishes off the rest of their squad, or you just get another big ritual Mitsurugi, so whether you need to advance your own game plan or stifle your opponent's, this card has you covered. It's also nifty for tributing off the Makotos during your opponent's turn to help you get double value out of them. You summon them on your own turn to get a search, tribute them again later on for even more value. Just remember you can only tribute monsters from the field, so no enabling any in-hand Makotos. Still, we're making out like a bandit with this one. It kind of makes me wonder why all those Ace Attorney games take so long. Seems like this would clear up a lot of cases really quickly. Mitsurugi Prayers is a quick play spell card that, when you activate it, lets you tribute a reptile monster in your hand or on your field to apply one of the following effects. Or, if you tributed a monster at activation, you can apply both in sequence. The first effect adds a Mitsurugi monster from your deck to your hand, while the second one has you taking 800 damage. Then you can special summon a Mitsurugi monster from your hand or grave, but it can't attack directly. This is just another banger. At worst, it reads like a Mitsurugi reinforcement of the army, but paired with a tributed Mitsurugi, you can do so much more. If you tribute one of the Makotos, then you can get another Makoto to get their search and revive the Makoto that you just tributed. The revived one will trigger its search at that point, and now you have 8 levels to work with. All you need now is a ritual summoning effect and the right monster, and you're good to go. And thankfully, we've got a ritual spell coming up that solves both ends of that problem. This is another really solid card for helping to tie the theme together, and I'm sure Kusanagi is just over the moon about it. Someone made fan art out of him, and I can tell you from personal experience, getting fan art rules. Mitsurugi Mirror is a ritual spell card that can ritual summon any reptile ritual monster from your hand or grave. Though at present it's just Mitsurugi, so no funny business right now. You must tribute reptile monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal or exceed the level of the ritual monster, and if any of your big ritual monsters, Ame no Murakumo, Butsu no Mitama, or Ame no Habakiri no Mitsurugi get tributed while this card is in your grave, you can shuffle this card into the deck. Hey, free recycling, that's pretty nifty. Though not as nifty as the fact that because it named all of our rituals, we can now play Pre-Preparation of Rites, one of the strongest ritual support cards ever printed. Notably, this also ritual summons from the graveyard, so if we have to tribute one of our big rituals early on to make a different one and it isn't able to summon itself, Mirror is around to help pick him back up. Now that's what I call some mirror force. Mitsurugi Ritual is a ritual spell card that can be used to ritual summon any reptile ritual monster, and activates either one of 2 effects, but you can only use each effect once per turn. So if you end up drawing 2 of them, you can activate both in the same turn, provided you use different modes. Mode 1 has you ritual summoning a reptile ritual monster from your deck by tributing reptile monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal the level of the ritual monster, while Mode 2 has you ritual summoning a reptile monster from your hand by tributing up to 2 reptile monsters from your hand, deck, or field whose levels equal the level of the ritual monster. So with this one spell, you only need the fodder or the ritual monster, but not both, which is, wild. Like we said during Mitsurugi prayers, if you summon Saji at any point during any of this, you can put Mitsurugi Ritual into your hand and then tribute away your Mikotos for any of the Mitsurugi Ritual monsters hiding in your deck. And if you get Mitama, then you can get those little punks back incredibly quickly. But if instead you have the ritual monster, you can send Saji and Aratama to graveyard to search out any of the rituals and mirror. Then tribute the ritual that you just summoned for the summon of the new ritual that you got, which will then trigger the first ritual to get you a search and put it back on the field. And once again, if any of those were Mitama, then you also get a chance to reanimate those reptiles. I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that this is our branded fusion, and it's going to be the key to many of our victories, if not all of them. Now, how do we get Murakumo out of that mountaintop? That dragon deserves the only reward worthy of such a feat: a delicious personal pan pizza! Mitsurugi's Sacred Boundary is a continuous spell card that keeps your opponent from targeting Mitsurugi ritual monsters you control with the effects of monsters that were special summoned from the extra deck. You can also target 4 Mitsurugi cards in your grave, accept copies of this card, and shuffle them into the deck. Then, if your opponent controls a monster, make them tribute a monster they control, their choice. This makes it ineffectual against decks that go wide, they can simply pick their worst monster, but against singularly powerful creatures, this is a great way to remove them, as forcing your opponent to tribute their own monsters is one of the most effective ways to get around protection. Or you get to bait some interaction that you wouldn't want hitting your other cards. It's a win-win. Also, shuffling back your cards is a very real cost. It's nice we have a way to get our spells and traps back into rotation, but most of our monsters do their best work while in the graveyard. And Kusanagi can even grab those cards back into our hand for immediate use. That's not to say this card is a non-bow. Sometimes your other avenues of recycling are cut off and you just need a way to get your resources back, and some incidental removal and protection is more than most decks ever dream of having. But when it comes to evaluating card power, well, we have to draw the line somewhere. Mitsurugi Great Purification is a normal trap card that, when your opponent activates a card or effect, you contribute a level 5 or higher reptile monster to negate that effect, and if you do, destroy that card. And you can also banish this card from your grave, then target a reptile monster in your grave and special summon it, and if you do, tribute one other monster that you control. But you can only use one effect of this card per turn, and only once per turn. So we have an Omni negate here, so long as you have a big reptile to feed it, and as we've seen from our rituals, those don't stay down for very long. And it even brings back our reptiles from the grave should we have another monster to feed to it, which once again, not really a big deal if you have your big boys in play. Though it also does help to trigger your Mikotos. This is a solid card to have access to, especially if you can loop this with Kusanagi. But did we have to purify the little goblins too? Yu-Gi-Oh! Goblins already have it hard enough as it is, now you want to bombard them with fire turtles? Mitsurugi Tempest is a normal trap card that you can activate if you have a Mitsurugi ritual spell card in your grave. You must tribute 3 monsters whose original names are Ame no Murakumo no Mitsurugi, Futsu no Mitama no Mitsurugi, and Ame no Habakiri no Mitsurugi, and it makes your opponent banish exactly 8 cards from their hand, field, extra deck, and or graveyard. This one is hard to parse. I mean, at the end of the day, it's bait. It's obviously bait. You're not actually supposed to play this card. I mean, you have to get all 3 of your rituals onto the field, and by that point, you're probably winning the game already. And once you do pull this off, you still don't get to choose which cards get banished. The opponent still gets to be in the driver's seat for that. So the text should read it banishes the 8 least important cards your opponent has access to. But this is where I start playing devil's advocate, because if I just called it bad, well, what's the fun in that? While many decks like using the grave as a resource, filling them up super quickly isn't something all of them can do with proficiency. And even if they do, well, they want those cards in their grave for a reason. So shunting off a bunch of graveyard cards isn't necessarily an easy thing for your opponent to do. And if their graveyard is small enough, they have to start picking cards from their other, more meaningful locations. And suddenly, this gets to be a bit of a spiky situation for your opponent. And while you have to tribute all of the big bosses, well, I'm a broken record here. As long as their self-revive is still active, you just get all of them back, so it's not like it even cost you any monsters. Heck, that even ends up searching you 3 more cards. But none of what I said really beats the win more allegations. If you're in a spot where you can make this work, you've got the resources to win the game in almost any scenario. And when you're not in a position to use it, this card's dead as a doornail. It's true that 3 heads are better than 1, but 24 of them? Now I'm starting to see why we have all these swords lying around up. Hey, go ahead and grab one and start chopping, okay? We gotta get rid of these things fast. So that's all the Mitsurugi cards, but what do we do with them? Well, our on-board game plan is already really solid. We have enablers, extenders, power plays, some negation even. Really the big issue is that it's made up of so many moving parts. No matter how streamlined you make it, ritual decks are always going to have some space between the gears for clever opponents to start hurling wrenches into, so we've got to focus on adding as much utility to the deck as possible. So let's explore the kinds of reptile and ritual synergies we can use to help them out. First up, because Reptile is our primary typing, and we have decent access to rank 4s, King of the Feral Imps is basically an auto-include in any build of the deck to help put the right reptile in your hand at the right time. Also, consider running Kage to Kage to help turbocharge the process. Alternatively, you can run Reptile Coatl, which you can special summon from your hand as long as you control a dark attribute reptile-type monster, which is, last time I checked, all the Mitsurugis. In fact, let's take this opportunity to cover our archetype-specific synergies, and we'll start with those Reptilans. Coatl already provides you with an excellent tuner, though if you're under any kind of reptile lock, your only real option is Reptile Melusine, but that's not nothing. It'll have destruction protection applied to it, a way to zero out your opponent's monster's attack power, and it even floats. Echidna is a fantastic link monster to put your spare reptiles into, cause it also zeroes out monsters and can search you more reptiles. Round things out with Reptilan Ramifications to search out the cards you need, and Spawn to generate free tokens, and you've got yourself a clutch of snakes that turns even the mightiest opponents into rigid, ineffectual stone. Another theme keen to slither onto the scene is Ogdoadics. Snake Rain is the big and splashy spell card that fills up your graveyard, but you often get more value out of Water Lily setting up your grave and giving you a free reptile, all for a single card. Ogdo Abyss has a very specialized board wipe that works well alongside our rituals because they keep coming back from the grave. And Nephil Abyss is incredibly easy to summon, and you get a free monster from your grave every turn once you do so. Serpent Strike can turn your light Ogdoadics in hand into monster reborns for your Mitsurugis in your graveyard, and vice versa, while giving you a trigger to fill your grave with more cards. While Daybreak gives you tokens by tributing reptiles, and you already know how good that can be. I'd also be curious to see what aliens can bring to the mix, but this is probably just wishful thinking on my part. Stealth Buster can be sent from your deck to the graveyard when you activate Mitsurugi Ritual when you're pulling materials out of your deck, and that helps distribute A counters around the field. And M-Frame is very good at trading cards in your hand for even more of those counters. Pair that up with Cosmic Slicer Zeril, and you've got a pretty nifty one-sided skill drain on your hand. It even searches you more A counters and gives you Reptile normal summons. But I think we're veering too far into another game plan for this to be viable in the long term. Probably the only one worth considering is IAS, Invasive Alien Species, but only if field spell cards are rampant during a format, and even then, only in the side deck. Cause boy howdy is this card rude if your opponent's trying to use some field spells. While they're not entirely reptiles, the Ragnarika Cry-type trio also have effects that benefit us, though can be a bit awkward if you ever put on an actual reptiles-only lock. Sorry, insects and plants, this is a Scalies-only club. Samurai Beetle can reborn our smaller reptiles, Armored Lizard gives you bouncing removal, very good in the mirror match, Wicked Butterfly can turbo out monsters from your hand, and while we can't make the best of its draw effect, even one is pretty good. Selene Snapper can banish monsters to remove back row, and Stag Sovereign can do the same for monsters. It's a massive toolbox and one you'll be glad to have on hand. Now, let's take a look at some reptile support in general. Night Sword Serpent is a great way to get some board presence since tributing a monster for a ritual summon is being sent to grave by a card effect, at which point you have another level 4 monster to use for a wide variety of extra deck summons. Vanguard of the Underground Emperor is pretty similar. It can act as the entire ritual material for our bosses, and we can bring it back by using monsters from our hand as more material for ritual summons, at which point we can use it as fodder or overlay with it. Haggard Lizard Dose can be pretty nifty. We have no shortage of reptiles to banish for its effect, so we can get that draw, and we can either buff up one of our weak monsters, like Lizardos itself, or lower the attack of an opponent's monster. Maybe even to 0 if we have the right monsters. Hello again, Reptilans. Orobinus, the Avatar of Malice, might also be a good catch. It special summons itself from hand by tributing reptiles, off to a good start here, and you can tribute a monster while it's on the field to debuff the opponent's monster lineup based on the tributed monster's original attack. And we've got some big beefy bodies to help with this payoff. Overlay Eater is a cute option to have in your back pocket in case you're up against an Xyz deck, letting you steal an important material away from them so their cards don't function quite as well. Gotta have that Pearly out ready just in case. And hey, you get to charge up your own Xyz monsters in the process. And as far as revival targets for Mitama go, Hyperia gets you a draw once per turn when you summon it. I can think of a lot worse on summon triggers. My only complaint is it's low level, but I guess that's why Sprite liked it so much. Viper's Rebirth is kind of like a type-specific monster reborn, but comes with some caveats, so if you somehow need more Grave Revival, I guess try Monster Reborn first. And of course, we can't have a reptile deck without mentioning Offering to the Snake Deity, which is still pretty good here. It doesn't tribute the reptile like how Icarus Attack does it, which means a tad less synergy with all of our tribute stuff, but it can still do some funny things. Like, because it destroys every card involved, you can tribute one of the Makotos to protect the reptile that you chose, but at that point you're still losing a monster and could have just targeted the Makoto to avoid any kind of interaction that might get in the way of your cute play. So it's nothing special, but it does give you an opportunity to tribute the Makoto to maybe get a search. So I guess keep it in mind, but unless you really need that, it's just an honest 2-for-2 removal card at quick speed. Now, that does it for the reptile support stuff, but what about the ritual part? Is there anything we can splash in to help us there? Yeah, tons of it. We've already talked about how pre-preparation of rites is a one-stop shop for setting up your mirror plays, but we've got a lot more. The recently released Code Igniter may only search off-theme cards, but it can ritual summon anything. So if you have a ritual monster and a pair of level 4 monsters to overlay for this, and let's be real, you do, you'll find that whatever ritual spell you want is just hiding out in your extra deck. Another fantastic ritual support monster is Dynamondo. Making it can give you some pretty nifty removal while getting back a ritual monster, but the killer effect is the second one, where you can tribute it during your opponent's turn to summon a ritual monster from your graveyard, or add it to your hand. But you're gonna want to summon it because now we have another venue to summon Murakumo. Manju of the 10,000 Hands is, of course, a staple, getting you whatever half of the ritual formula you need, though is harder to use as material than normal since most of our cards call for the tributing of reptile type monsters, but still, we've seen what just Mitsurugi Ritual can do for you, so it's not terrible. In fact, if you want to be really cheeky, you could try running out Shoju of the Trillion Hands. Granted, you get its effect if it's summoned no matter what, it doesn't have to be tributed, but it's a level 6 monster that's probably going to be in your hand, so tributing is kind of in the cards. As for a silly tech pick, I've got to give it to one of the jankiest reptiles printed in recent memory, Liberator Ito. 4,000 attack clears most everything in the game, but your opponent needs to set you up by having a monster on their field or in their grave with an effect that activates in the hand or on the field in response to a card or effect activation. That is a weird statement. It's looking for a monster to be in a particular zone that has an effect that activates in a particular zone and only in particular circumstances. It's kind of like a Matryoshka doll of contracts in here. The primary cards it's looking for, though, are things like hand traps and negation bodies. If your opponent has an Ash Blossom in their graveyard, then congratulations, that is a monster card in the graveyard with an effect that activates in the hand and has to be activated in response to another card or effect. Similarly, cards like Borreload Savage Dragon work because it is a monster on the field with an effect that activates on the field that has to respond to the activation of another card. But it doesn't just have to be negation bodies. For a more topical example, Ryziel Detonator activates in response to cards or effects, so even though it just destroys something in response, that still counts. So, once your opponent has played a monster with probably one of the most common and fundamental templates in the history of the game, you get a 4K body whose summon cannot be negated and is unaffected by your opponent's activated monster effects on the field during your turn. Thankfully, you can summon it from your hand or graveyard, so you can use all 8 of its levels to make a ritual monster and then summon it later. And because it costs half of your life points no matter what, you'll always have enough to summon it, making this an outrageous card to have during the late game when both players are low on resources. It's especially difficult to play around because it's one of the few cards with a condition like this that doesn't check for your opponent to make a particular action, they just need to have a particular kind of card. At that point, you can summon out Ito and trash your opponent with an obelisk that you had stowed away in your graveyard. Have fun, everyone! And that's all I've got to say about Mitsurugis. This archetype seems hella fun to play, giving you lots of angles to approach your problems from, and plays with some pretty out there mechanics while doing so. And it's not interesting for the sake of it, they actually gave it some nasty cards to play with, which is good because now your opponent doesn't have to take it easy on you to actually have fun with it. Now, am I saying that we got this big ol' Orochi flavored deck because we're getting a new Okami game? Well, I'm not saying that, though remember that they did make the Cosmo cards around the time of the new Star Wars trilogy starting up, so I wouldn't put it past them. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are Mitsurugis the snake way to go, or are these danger noodles not quite so dangerous? And which one's your favorite? We've got a lot of good designs to choose from, but I'm loving Mitama's Angry Fire Turtle energy. It rules. Let me know what your favorite was down below, and if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, click one of my videos in the suggested feed to help me show up in your homepage, and be sure to share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales that even come with their own lore, and save 5% on your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. It was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, Upstairs Media, and Chibi Gohan, Nebula Navigators, 3rd Dynasty, 50 Gigabytes, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Battle Axe, Kane Senpai, Charlie Mercury, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Dr. Reaper, Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Great Big Pillock, Groog, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Marion James E. Picata, Meme King, Millennia Asta, Muse Clark, Neon Yami Nair, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Patpoose, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sonic 21 Blast, the Critic of Innocence, Thievery Coast and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders Ally Vatnia, Animasta, Anthrak, a Random Pup, Baden Von Titty Sprinkles, Beluga Master, Blaze Rider, Blitzwolf, Chaz Ghost, Chibi Gohan, again, Christopher Fuss, again, Chris B, Cool Trainer Dark, Dr. Entity RIP, kind of again, what are you maniacs doing here? Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Herbal D, Inblink, Kale the Dragon, Lobomaru, Manga Pages, Martin Moore 2468, Natiel Lee Alexander, Nitromo, Not Al Gore, Nyx, Obsidian, Pombo, Rhyme Kairos, Shwenny, Shizuki Nijimura, Simic Toadstool, Sir Knight JCB, Sphilia, Stephen Williamson, The Legendary Raven, The Phantom Knights of Shitted Pants, The Queen of Time, The Gene, Tiger X2476, Tristan O'Meara, and Zaldreka, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you would check out the link to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to see another theme full of scaly scoundrels, check out this video where I cover the Reptilands. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.